First of all, I lived in Palestine during the first Intifada, and this is where I grew up. And the first Intifada was the first time that people are reviving the Islamic identity, because before that, the resistance, the Palestinian resistance, was mainly secular. The PLO was mainly secular from 1967, the resistance against Israel, the bombing of airplanes, and so on. So you have two sides of Palestinian society. One is secular, with some communist parts and various different parts, and they were the ones leading this as part of a national struggle. So there was a national struggle. This is different from 1948. In 1948, there was a strong Islamic identity in terms of the Muslim Brothers, who were their first base was established in Palestine after Egypt, and they led the resistance, and they managed to save Gaza from occupation in 1948. Had it not been for the Egyptian fighters who came with these groups and fought in front of the Egyptian army, Gaza would have been lost in 1948, and we wouldn't even be talking about this today. The second, 1967, was mainly the establishment of the Palestinian Liberation Organization, the PLO, and they were pushing for liberating Palestine, but on nationalist fronts. So they wanted a nationalist, a nation state for Palestine. Then you had in 1987, and this was as part of the Islamic revival that was happening at that time, and this is the time I lived in Palestine, the establishment of the Islamic resistance movements. And these resistance movements saw the base as the Ummah, their base is being the Ummah, and their background as being the Quran, and pushing this idea of we want this land to be liberated because of its holiness to Islam and to Muslims. I grew up in the mosques of Khalid in Hebron, close to Bayt al-Maqdis. My father was teaching in both the University of Hebron and Khalid and the University of Al-Quds, and he used to have a regular classes in Al-Masjid al-Aqsa until he was expelled from Palestine in 1992, in December 1992. Until then, we lived in Palestine, and after that, so during the whole of the first Intifada, the soldiers attacking a school, throwing gas bombs at students, and I recall this. We had two schools. One was a girls' school and one was a boys' school next to each other, and we would carry the injured girls because the girls' school was next to the main road, and that's where the soldiers were stationed, and they would attack the schools in the middle of the playtime. And this is not something that Israel started from scratch. What the current attack on Gaza, there has been so many attacks on Gaza before. They wiped out so many of the infrastructure, and they attack particularly the infrastructure so that they want to strangle the people of Gaza. This was the aim of this war. But going back to this, until then, we lived in Palestine, and as my father was expelled, we were forced to also leave. And my father was before that studying in Exeter in the UK, so we came to the UK and we lived in the UK until I moved to Turkey to work here within the field of Bayt al-Maqdis studies, Islamic Jerusalem studies. And this is my area of expertise. Particularly, I did my master's and PhD on the historical geography of the Quran and on Bayt al-Maqdis, trying to revive the Islamic concepts that we have lost. Today, we talk about the Palestine that was drawn by the British and the French. We talk within colonial set boundaries, and we do not even go beyond them. And this idea of reviving something that was mentioned by Allah in the Quran, al-ardul muqaddasa, al-ardul mubarak, these terminologies Muslims today have no awareness of. We talk about a Palestine which is British Palestine as it was set according to certain agreements between them and various different colonialist powers at that time. So this is the background I come from. And I lived during the first Intifada, and I saw the resistance with my own eyes. I saw the fighters fighting and becoming shaheed on the streets just by throwing stones. And this was the Intifada of stones. They had no weapons. They had nothing. They wanted to resist. They could not accept the occupation. And every international right gives them the right to resist the occupation. The occupation has no right to be in their land, particularly that this is their land and they are never going to give it up. They saw what happened in 1948 when people...
Dr. Khalid,